library. I would like to thank all of you for coming. I find that libraries are very unique institutions within our community. They are safe places where we can engage in dialogue on the important matters that affect our community and our society as a whole. So I'm pleased to have you all here tonight. I would like to give an extra thank you to our various community co-sponsors. That includes the Bay Village and the Rocky River Green Teams. And also to the Surfrider Foundation, and of course the League of Women Voters that we're so happy to be co-hosting this event with tonight. Before we introduce our fabulous moderator this evening, I'm going to do a little plug for some upcoming League of Women Voters programs. Coming up on Thursday, September 12th at 7 p.m. is the 2020 census. What does it mean for Ohio and Greater Cleveland? That's going to be at the Beechwood Landmark Center. And then coming up here again on the west side is Women's Health in Ohio. That will be held on Tuesday, September 17th at 6:30 at Lakewood Public Library. And I know there's some really exciting speakers and presenters that are going to be at both of those programs you're not going to want to miss. So tonight we're having, I think what is our third series on plastic pollution here at the Rocky River Library. Sustainability is something that's very important to libraries. The American Library Association, I'm very pleased to announce, just this past year has adopted sustainability as a core value of the libraries. And also here at Rocky River Public Library, we have started our own internal green team. So we're working on ways to find, to reduce our impact on the environment here at the library. So we are thrilled to have everyone here tonight. Our moderator is Jocelyn Travis. She is a wonder. I love her biography. Jocelyn is a board member of the League of Women Voters of Ohio, and she is the Voter Service Chair for the League of Women Voters of Ohio. So we think she's special. Jocelyn is also with the Sierra Club of Ohio, and is leading the effort for Cleveland's Ready for 100 campaign for the city to become 100% clean energy by the year 2050. She earned her MPA from Cleveland State University and her BS in political science from Alabama State University. Jocelyn has been actively involved in issues including voting rights, civil engagement, environmental justice, youth, and inclusion. She also loves providing education and training throughout her community and beyond. And additionally, her daughter Joy is a recent law student graduate and a community activist. I wonder where she gets that from. Yes.
Thank you so much, Heather. And thank you so much for your hospitality. We really appreciate the work that you're doing and for allowing us to be in this wonderful facility. Thank you. So good evening, all.
Good evening.
It is really an honor to be able to serve as moderator this evening, even though I did get it by default. Our young lady, Emily Obringer, who was going to moderate the session this evening, had an emergency. And I will tell you that Emily is, she does amazing work around water for the Sierra Club. And so she did give me a call this morning, and I told her I would just be thrilled to be able to join you this evening. So if you see a few little bumps along the way on my part, you know why. So again, it's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully you can all hear me okay. All right. And let me first, though, introduce our amazing panel. And I think, though, the way we like to start is, how about after I call your name, would you like to just maybe say a few words to start off with before we start with the questions? And if anything you'd like to share, just to introduce yourself and to open up. So Cheryl, you're picking up the mic. So we'll start with Cheryl Johncox. And Cheryl is with the Sierra Club, actually Ohio and nationally. And I'll let Cheryl Johncox introduce herself.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Cheryl Johncox. I'm with the National Sierra Club Beyond Dirty Fossil Fuels program. It says it's on.
It's that tilt.
And that's okay. I work on anything that has to do with oil and gas in the state of Ohio. I am a Clevelander by birth. I've lived in Cleveland, the Cleveland area for the first 20 years of my life, and I now reside in Central Ohio. I've been doing this work for about 12 years, and water is very important to me, and I'm super excited to be here with the League of Women Voters this evening. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, and thank you again for serving. Our next panelist is Sarah Damron, who's with the Surfrider Foundation.
Hi, thanks everybody for having us here tonight. Pleased to be here. I don't think this is working, so I'm just going to talk
You want to
loudly.
try the other mic on the table?
Okay. Alright, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello. Much better. Okay, so yeah, I work with the Surfrider Foundation, which is an organization. It's grassroots, volunteer-led chapters all over the country that are working for clean water and healthy beaches. It's really important, of course. Water is a really important resource, and our coastlines, of course, are very important to us as well and sustain much of America's population and also economies. So in any event, Surfrider works on a whole host of issues under that umbrella, which includes plastic pollution. So that's our foray into this issue here. We do have a chapter in Northern Ohio that's here in the greater Cleveland area. I personally live in Loudonville, and I support our chapters in various regions of the country on plastic pollution issues, but a whole array of additional issues as well. So I'm glad to be here tonight. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Next, we have Sunny Simon. Sunny is the District 11 Cuyahoga County Council member. Welcome, Sunny.
Hi, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. One of my main passions in life is environmental protection, conservation, and most recently an obsession with plastic. So I represent the 11th district of the county. I'm one of 11 council members. I represent the east side, Beechwood, Euclid, cities, 6 cities there. But I was able, when I got onto the new government council, to get a determination that the new charter government would enable us as legislators to actually pass laws that would impact the county. And one of the main issues I saw as a problem, it was new then in 2011-12, was the growing problem with plastic pollution, particularly in Lake Erie. The studies were coming out, new studies about how bad it was, and I launched a balloon in 2012 and started talking about what we can do, and just recently I was able to get a plastic single-use bag ban at point of sale throughout the entire Cuyahoga County.
Thank you so much, Sunny. Our next panelist is Sarah Mathews, who's with Rumpke Waste.
Good evening. Yes, thank you very much for having me this evening. My name is Sarah Mathews. I am the municipal sales representative with Rumpke Waste and Recycling Services. Rumpke is a family-owned and operated waste and recycling firm headquartered here in Ohio. We are the largest recycler in Ohio. And I work with municipalities to help manage their trash and recycle programs. I go through the bidding process with them and then manage those and the curbside programs that you all receive. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Our final panelist is Cristie Snyder. Cristie is with the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Cristie Snyder. I am with the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. Thank you for inviting us to be here. We are also, my agency is also known as Cuyahoga Recycles. We are kind of everywhere right now, and maybe not for the right reasons, because recycling is really difficult in Cuyahoga County and throughout the nation and the world. What we do as an agency is we help residents, businesses, schools, public agencies, anyone who wants to reduce waste, recycle more, add composting, and change the way they manage their solid waste. We provide them with those services, or we at least offer them some consultation or some answers, and give them ways to properly dispose of their materials that they have to get rid of. So I'm happy to answer recycling questions if you have them. That's why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Cristie. Before you pass that down, though, let me first of all say, let's welcome our panelists. And, I think the question that's on my mind, and probably yours, is, Cristie, you said that it's difficult. Can you explain a little bit more of why it's so difficult?
Yeah, everyone is having problems with recycling, right? Because everyone in this room recycled everything at one point in their lives, just throwing it all in the recycling bin. Because you thought it could be recycled, or because you thought it should be recycled, or somebody told you could recycle it. So in the last 2 years or so, there has been a major shift in world markets. And actually Sarah can talk about this a lot too, as a municipal hauler, someone who serves the residents in the municipalities in Cuyahoga County. But there's been a massive shift in what China, who was the largest buyer of our paper and our plastics, what they will accept and how much contamination they will accept. We've also learned that there are some plastics that maybe we were throwing in the bin that couldn't be processed as easily or made easily into new things. There's a lot of different reasons for why recycling has changed, and it's multifaceted. But the biggest thing that I want everyone to take away from here is that you can't throw everything in the recycling bin and expect somebody else to figure it out. Because if you throw it all in, you're actually causing more problems than doing a good deed. So I don't know if that answered the question or not.
That helps greatly. Thank you.
Sure.
So much for that. So did we get the other mic working?
I think we can have the one.
Just the one. Oh, okay.
I'm loud.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to kind of follow Emily's format. And so, Cheryl, the first question, Cheryl Johncox, what role does fracking play in plastic production?
Thank you. So folks probably know that plastic is made from oil, but it can also be made from derivatives of natural gas. About 50% of the plastic that is in the world right now has been produced since 2013. So it's really ramped up. And coincidentally, fracking started in the Appalachian region in 2010. It's not a coincidence. Fracked gas is essentially methane, and methane can be split into different components. And those different components, ethane, propane, butane, can be made into single-use plastics. So not only do we have a natural gas market that is flooded, and the prices are very low, they have wet gas, which is ethane. It's a less processed or less developed gas as far as age goes, and it's the feedstock essentially for plastic production. And so there's also a glut of ethane in the United States right now from the Appalachian region, and Pennsylvania is the second largest producer of fracked gas in the country, only behind Texas, Permian Basin, which is just coming online. So fracking development and fracking is very closely related to plastic production and is in fact feedstock for plastic production.
You know, and you know, Emily kind of had another question that related to that. So, and you talked a little bit about it, but her question is, can you talk a little bit about what ethane cracking is, how it relates to plastic production, and how it ties to local community health here in Ohio?
Sure. So ethane cracking is it's a technical process. It's a process that frack gas undergoes when they want to separate these different components from the fracked gas. They superheat, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, and they use that water to crack the methane molecule in order to get the different components, the other types of petroleum products. And ethane cracking is actually in the works for Ohio. They have proposed 3 ethane crackers for Ohio and plastic production. And not only does it use a lot of water, but it also, that process releases a lot of toxics into local communities. So I'm working with this community on the Ohio River, Shady Side. It's called Shady Side. It's in Belmont County. And they're planning to put an ethane cracker there that would produce 1.5 million metric tons of plastic pellets, the feedstock for other plastics, per year. And this community is going to be, essentially receiving about twice as much of the toxic load that they're currently getting. So not only do they have fracking in the community, they have compressor stations in the community, but now they'll get this ethane cracker in the community, and it will dump about 2 school bus loads full of fine particulate matter on their community every year, and there are also a number of carcinogens that are released during this process that will be directly going into this community. It's particularly bad for them for air pollution, because the hills and valleys along the Ohio River and Appalachian region, they get these air inversions that the cold air gets trapped down close to their homes and their schools, and so there is a significant there's a significant risk that pollution will be trapped down near their homes and schools for long periods of time.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Sarah, while we have you, so Sarah, your questions are geared around House Bill 242. And so basically, if you could tell us a little bit about that House bill and what the motivation is behind the introduction of House Bill 242, and a little bit about the current support and opposition of that bill.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So there's actually probably a lot that could be discussed before that bill, but where we're at with this bill, it's a bill in the Ohio State Legislature that has been introduced by Representatives, let's see, Lang and Jones. And this is actually a clone of a past bill from the last session. And what this bill would do would take away the authority given by the Ohio Constitution to local governments, so cities, also charter government counties and townships, take away their authority to establish regulations on any kind of auxiliary container, as it's called, which would include bags, cups, bottles, cans, anything that's used to transport or consume food or beverages. So that's a lot of different things. So it preempts things like a bag ban, let's say, if a community decided that they wanted to do something to curb plastic waste. If this bill passes, they would be precluded from doing that and exercising their constitutional rights to do so. So obviously that's very unfortunate. It is really part of a broader kind of political movement, though. Unfortunately, Ohio just happens to be one of the states that this is happening in. And the plastics issue or containers issue is just one of the issues that's being preempted. So it's actually a lot larger than just containers and just Ohio. I don't know if you want me to get into that or not, but I can if you'd like.
Sure, I see your
All right.
hand. Go for it.
Oh, man. Okay, so let's see. I guess the larger movement of preemption, this is happening in states throughout the country. Local communities are being preempted from regulating all kinds of things, from gun control to establishing minimum wage to banning fracking in their communities to a whole host, just broad spectrum of generally progressive type issues. So it's no surprise that that movement is generally, I guess, conservatively led, but really, to me even, I don't see that as being conservative values so much as really corporate led. A lot of money is being poured into that whole situation. And so a group called the American Legislative Exchange Council, they're more or less a bill factory. They create template legislation to advance corporate interests like that. And so they actually have template bills for a number of the issues I just named, including preempting the regulation of auxiliary containers. So if you go to their website, you can find these template bills. And it's not a coincidence that the bills that they have there, I mean, you could pull up the bill from, you know, the House Bill 242 and see that the language matches. So, to date on the container issue, there are actually 15 states now that have these preemption laws on the books, including a few states here in the Midwest, the Great Lakes region. So Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Indiana have these laws on the books, and so we're just kind of next in line, really. So it's really important that we stand up for, you know, our community's rights to be able to make these decisions and determinations for ourselves. Not that every, you know, community necessarily, you know, wants or needs to, you know, establish some kind of legislation, but they should certainly have the ability to do so if they find that that's in their community's best interest.
And the name of that organization again?
Yeah, for short, it's ALEC, but it's the American Legislative Exchange Council.
Thank you so much. And I saw Sonny just really thinking hard. So, do you want to make a comment to that before I ask your question?
So, I knew this was coming when, you know, I was able to galvanize support at the county to get this passed, that the State House and was waiting with, you know, anxiousness down there, ready to preempt us. It was just a matter of a minute, and I just wondered, you know, if I should stop what we were doing or continue despite that. And I made a decision that it's really important just to keep pushing, just to move forward and advance this issue as far as I possibly can with my county support, my colleagues, because, you know, I think raising awareness and consciousness around this issue is gonna be a really positive side effect whether we get preempted or not. So we're pushing forward. I'm waiting for the state to resume its, you know, from its recess and get another plan in place, and we'll be next in court, I'm assuming.
Sonny, the question also that's being asked of you is, why was this plastic bag ban so important to you? And what can a community expect as this bag ban is implemented? And what are your plans to prepare the community?
Okay, thank you so much. So, plastic pollution, as I said, is just a horrendous problem that I think we can solve as consumers, as communities. It's a low-hanging fruit in my mind. We can change. A small amount of change of our behavior is going to have huge impacts, and we know that 400 cities and states throughout the United States have a ban or a fee or a tax in place right now. Not even considering what's happening worldwide, it's taking off, it's effective, and it's going to just be able to change things tremendously for future generations. That's why it was important to me. What's the plan? The plan is to have an educational awareness campaign, and the county's going to be launching before the actual effective date. Effective date of the legislation is January 1, 2020, but we're going to have a whole community launch with giveaway reusable bags and informational bits, social media, and just a way for the community to understand why this is so important.
Thank you so much. So next, we're going to go to Sarah Mathews. And Sarah, can you tell us what the current status of plastic recycling is in our own community? Oh, you know what, that's kind of redundant. Is that, well, you can tell us, because that's really your
Okay,
field.
I can tell you
Okay,
from
all right.
our perspective at Rumpke.
Okay.
Again, we are family owned and operated. And we are headquartered in Ohio. We do have recycling facilities in Ohio, and we are dedicated to recycling. We have established already this evening that recycling is difficult currently, and there are quite a few challenges worldwide, and most definitely here in the United States. However, we're committed, and we make investment in the recycling programs themselves. Even as recent as this year, we did upgrade one of our material recovery facilities in Columbus, putting another $500,000 in to improve that process. We also have the only glass recycling facility in the state of Ohio, and we recently put an additional $1 million in that facility this year to improve processes. So we are very committed to recycling. Our current program here in Ohio, we focus on plastic bottles and jugs. We are a processor. We do take material from the consumer, and we process that and get it to an end user. We have long-term committed relationships with end users that can guarantee that plastic bottles and jugs are in fact recycled. So our focus of our programs is just that. It is being committed to recycling plastic bottles and jugs.
Okay, and the second part of that question is, how have the recent developments with China refusing our recycling waste, how is that affecting us here in Ohio?
Recycling is really, it's a commodity, and the supply and demand are what impact recycling. We can recycle, but we have to have an end market for it. So if we no longer have an end market for it, we are stuck with surpluses of recyclable material. So here in Ohio and in the United States, it's decreased an outlet for that end material. At Rumpke, again, family-owned, family-operated, we believe in long-term relationships. 98% of our material was staying in the United States, and 80% of our material was actually staying in the state of Ohio. So we are fortunate in the fact that we have already established those long-term relationships before the China sword did take place. Financially, it does impact us because with supply and demand, it does actually affect the commodity prices for each of those materials.
Thank you so much. Cristie, so the question is, do you have ideas about how we as consumers can help to divert waste?
The best thing that you can do is remember that recycling is last. So your first choice is to reduce. Decide if you really need the item. If you don't need the item, you don't use the item, you don't have to decide what to do with the item after you're done with it. If you can't reduce it and you can't reduce using the item, then choose to reuse it. Figure out a new way to put it to use one more time. And if you can't figure out what to do with those two things, it can go in recycling or it can go in the trash. And unfortunately at this point, we are throwing more things away. As Sarah just explained, plastic bottles and jugs are all that belong in the recycling bin, which leaves a lot more plastic to not be recovered and be placed in the trash. So one of the biggest questions we get is those clamshells. All your vegetables, all your fruits are in those clamshells. We hate them in our office. Our staff is just as frustrated with the way things have gone as everybody else in Cuyahoga County and the US. But we know that those clamshells can't be recovered at this time, so we try to find other ways to not purchase things in clamshells, which is challenging, but it means you just have to go the extra step. Find the farmer's market, figure out where you can buy the stuff in bulk, put it in produce bags instead of picking up that clamshell of strawberries at the store. So again, the best thing you can do is reduce and reuse before you have to choose to recycle.
Great, thank you so much. Why don't we just start back? I have a few more questions, and then we have lots of great questions from all of you in the audience. And Sarah, Mathews, so the question that we have for you is, does Rumpke have plans to support recycling at apartment complexes? And how much recycling is affected by contamination and wish cycling?
Okay, we currently do actively participate in recycling at apartment complexes. Our focus at Rumpke is multifaceted. We do focus on municipal work. That is my primary focus, is that I do work with municipalities to educate, implement, and ensure that their program is sustainable and successful. We do have other sales staff that do go out and audit our commercial customers and would take a look at the programs that they have in place, or perhaps they're lacking a program. They can go in and educate them on how to implement a recycling program, what materials can go in that program, how to capture it, and then they can set up a diversion program for them. Whether it is an office building or an apartment complex, we really look at every consumer. Wherever you have trash, we look at where you potentially could have recycling and help educate and implement that program. The second part of your question was how is contamination impacting recycling? And contamination impacts all of recycling. There are a couple of components when you talk about contamination. The first is it does contaminate the material. It takes the value of the other material down. whether it is, maybe it is a dirty container that you didn't wash out, then the material in that can actually get into other material, and now it's all a loss. It could be something that should not be in the stream at all. And when we talk about that, there are a couple of options there. The first is that it's really just trash. It needs to go into the trash. It doesn't hurt the program except for financially, which is very important. But then there's the other item of it's a safety concern, and that would be you have contamination that causes a concern at our material recovery facility, either damaging our equipment or potentially being hazardous to our employees, whether it's a propane tank or a battery or Christmas lights. It can really do quite a bit of damage. So we want clean, dry material, and we want to keep it to the basics. Your glass, plastic bottles and jugs, your cardboard, and your paper, and your metal, your aluminum cans always.
Thank you so much. Sunny, so the question is, some of these bans are part of a long-term goal to achieve zero waste. Do you have plans to keep moving in that direction, and so would you share those with us?
So, zero waste, I think, right now in the climate is not, in my opinion, a feasible goal, a zero waste county, just because of the national sword, Chinese sword, and so the ban itself, hopefully at some point coupled with the fee on paper, is just a way to eliminate and change the behavior of consumers. That's the goal. I'm not doing this to eventually have zero waste, because I think right now that's not a real attainable goal, but it's definitely to change behavior, and we know that with a fee or a ban that starts to happen. So this one area that we can impact will be plastic bags, and then maybe straws and other containers, and really the word is, in my mind, it's reject. You know, just don't go near these plastic items.
Thank you so much. Sarah, Damron, how exactly has plastic affected the Great Lakes region, and what role can residents play in mitigating that?
That's a great question, thank you. So just with the nature of plastics, really they're ubiquitous, unfortunately, which also leads to them being really spread out within the Great Lakes as well. The Alliance for the Great Lakes is another nonprofit organization, and one of the things that they do is they host adopt-a-beach cleanups throughout the Great Lakes region. And using numbers from their 2017 cleanups, over 85% of the litter that they collected at these cleanups either was partially or wholly plastic. So that's a fair amount of the litter, because as far as inputs go, the Rochester Institute of Technology estimates that overall throughout the Great Lakes region, 22 million pounds of plastic are going into the lakes every year. 5 million or so pounds, 5.5 million pounds are going just into Lake Erie. So that's approximately, if you want to think of it in some kind of tangible term, that's like 550 African elephants worth of plastic, which are very light materials going into Lake Erie every year. And with that being the case, we're finding things like, of course, big plastic items, which we are cleaning up to some degree. Only a fraction really of what's going in is being cleaned up. But we're also seeing issues with things called microplastics, which are very small plastics, the size of 5 millimeters or less. And so those are items like, for example, microfibers, which is probably one of the biggest contributors to plastic pollution, as we're now finding out. These are fibers that come off in the wash when you wash your clothes. So if you have clothes that are synthetic fibers like polyester or rayon or acrylic, when you wash them in your washer, little pieces of that are coming off, and then of course that white wash water is going into the sewer system, and the wastewater treatment plants aren't configured to filter those out. So every time people wash a load of clothes, all that's going into our waterways and eventually into the lake. So unfortunately, yeah, plastic pollution is a huge problem. And really, we're just now getting a sense of kind of the tip of the iceberg about how extensive the problem is. But researchers are finding, microplastics and, just grab samples from the lake. They're finding it in, sand on the beaches. They're finding it in drinking water. They're finding it in beer. It's everywhere. It's a little bit scary. So, kind of compounding that is the fact that, plastics themselves, of course, we heard from Cheryl what plastics are made of, but they also attract contaminants, so like persistent organic pollutants, such as PCBs, which come from things like refrigeration coolant. So if an animal, say a fish, is ingesting microplastics, and these plastics are attracting these persistent organic pollutants, then the fish is getting contaminated, and perceivably it's working its way up the food chain. So that's something that researchers are looking into.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Cheryl, can you tell us about the plans for the Appalachian Petrochemical Hub? And can you talk more about the indirect cost to clean water from plastic production?
So the Appalachian Petrochemical Hub is a scheme that has been thought up by the oil and gas and petrochemical industry. They've been scheming about 10 years now, and they want to turn the Rust Belt into the plastic belt. Their words, unfortunately. They have plans to put 24 projects in the Ohio River Valley, including ethane crackers, 5 ethane crackers that will be able to produce 7 million metric tons of single-use plastic feedstock a year. Along with, horrifyingly, they plan to store liquefied ethane, butane, and propane underneath the Ohio River in salt caverns. These salt caverns are old salt mines. The first one has just received all of its permits. It'll be going in Monroe County, Ohio. They plan to withdraw 1 billion with a B, 1 billion gallons a day from the Ohio River to enlarge the salt cavern. Then they plan to take the water out and put it in an impoundment with a dam that's 200 feet high right next to the river in the 100-year floodplain. And curiously, the industry will tell you that Hurricane Harvey was, the big push behind moving petrochemicals into the Appalachian region. And anyone that lives on the Ohio River can tell you that it floods all the time. So there are 24 total projects: Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia. The first project is being constructed. It's an ethane cracker that will come online in 2022. The Shell Corporation is building it. Along with the ethane cracker in Ohio, it has the greenhouse gas impact of bringing an old dirty coal-fired power plant back online. So while we're all working to move towards clean renewable energy, the oil and gas industry is seeing that plastics are where they can assure their economic future. And then we have found out that 1,000 new fracking wells will be needed every year to feed each one of these ethane crackers. Ohio is going to get 2, the one in Belmont County, and then the other one will be going about 40 miles north of Cincinnati, near Lebanon, Ohio. And so, it's the scariest thing that I've read in a really long time, especially for folks that have been preyed upon by the fossil fuel industry for over 100 years. And the indirect costs to plastic production, so we're at a place now where the fracking that has been done has been it's been about 5,000 to 6,000 feet. They're now fracking wells that take 10 to 20 million gallons per frac, and that water is coming out of the water cycle permanently.
Not only that, but then they take the waste that comes back up from that fracking and they are injecting this into old oil and gas wells. In the state of Ohio has over 200 injection wells. This waste is highly radioactive. It contains a chemical cocktail that we don't know what it is, and it's super salty. And the frack waste, it's millions of barrels a year all over the state of Ohio. It's being injected. I believe Summit County and Athens County receive the most waste of any counties in the state of Ohio. But it's a serious risk to our groundwater as well. There are about 100,000 old oil and gas wells that out there that were, drilled a whole long time ago. The state doesn't know where 75% of those wells are. They're not capped, and all of those wells, as well as geological fissures, are all conveyances for that wastewater to follow and potentially contaminate clean wells. Then there's the fact that the fracking industry does not have to even they don't have to get any kind of water permit in order to operate in this state, in order for them to frack a well. And then we had the Ohio EPA who permitted the ethane crackers coming to Ohio, saying that they have no idea what levels of these carcinogens are already in the Ohio River, and they've been fracking along the river for close to 15 years. So they don't know, and they just issued the permit. And we've got 24 of these facilities coming. 5 million people depend on their drinking water from the Ohio River. So there's a lot of indirect costs. And then just most recently I found out that the little pellets they produce, this raw feedstock, the plastic, it's not against the law for them to just discharge them into streams. So, so we have these little plastic pellets, they're called nurdles, making their way out into our rivers and streams. And, you drink this stuff, these are endocrine disruptors, they're hormone mimickers. They fit in our cells, right? We're made of carbon. They fit in our cells just like a lock and key where that estrogen or that testosterone is supposed to fit. And it blocks those hormones from actually getting to your cells. And those metabolic processes that your body's trying to go through, it blocks that from happening. So whether it's, the air, the water, or, you drinking out of a plastic container, you're putting yourself at risk. Just last year, the American Academy of Pediatrics said no children should be given any food or beverage in any plastic container. It's very serious. So, there are all kinds of health situations associated with the use and the disposal and the just release of these toxins into our environment. And we have, unfortunately, exposures all around us.
Actually, Cheryl can be really a funny person. So scary. So, we have lots of great questions from you all. Thank you so much. And I'll just kind of read the questions. Some have been directed specifically at you, panelists, and some are just general. So whoever wants to answer. This first question from Jackie is, what can be done to reduce the amount of packaging materials encasing almost everything we buy? Thank you, Jeff.
Cristie, you're gonna look at me. So there's and I'm not really the expert to answer this because I'm not a producer, I'm not a manufacturer, but there are some producer responsibility laws that are being looked at nationwide, and there's also I'm not gonna say the correct name of the organization, but there is a Product Stewardship Institute that is based somewhere on the East Coast that is also involved in conversations about packaging and also waste disposal for a lot of variety of different things. There's also a group called the Recycling Partnership that works directly with large corporations and manufacturers to help them determine what types of packaging they can create that will be able to be recovered and recycled down the line. They work with companies like Rumpke and Republic Services to see, how those materials can go through a MRF and if they can be recovered and the best way to do that. There is also there's another organization along with the Recycling Partnership, and it's called the Plastic Product Stewardship. I'm confusing all of them, I apologize. But there are organizations that are working towards better packaging and ways to recover that packaging, along with the people who recover it and recycle it, and with the government organizations that teach people how to properly dispose of those items once they're at their end life.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yes, I can add to that a little bit. What Cristie had stated. We at Rumpke, we do also work with, as she stated, we work with the manufacturers. We are very transparent. Our recycling facility, we are open for tours, whether you are an individual or a school or a manufacturer. And we're happy to explain our process and what works and what doesn't work. Because if we can be transparent about the process itself, we can work with manufacturers to explain to them in ways to improve some of the recycling that we are doing. One of the newest items that I would say has gone through this process is aseptic containers. At one point in time, this item was not recyclable, and now when you go to the grocery store, you see quite a few different containers that do fit this, and we are able to capture this and recycle this. So we do work closely with the solid waste districts and the government and the manufacturers themselves to just talk about why something can't be recycled and ways in which we can improve it so that we could potentially recycle it.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I like that question. I feel like it can be a combination or either or, I guess, of policy. So policies like extended producer responsibility, requiring the companies making the product to be responsible for the end of life of the packaging and such that comes along with that product, as well as economics. And so the economics piece is kind of twofold. One is just cost savings in materials. If people probably in the room have noticed that over years, plastic water bottles used to be pretty thick and durable, and now they're pretty flimsy and the caps are really small. Well, it requires less materials to make bottles like that, so that's one of the reasons they make that, saves them money. But also on the economic side, I think consumer pressure is really important as well. I feel like that's one of the main drivers of some of these big companies making big moves on plastics. There's an industry-led, it's called the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. It's a $1 billion initiative. Some of the big players are contributing to that. I think they see in part that the writing's on the wall. There has been a lot of movement from governments, but also from the public, just seeing that plastic waste and pollution is a really important and serious issue. Coke and Pepsi recently left the Plastic Industry Association, which is they've got a lobbying arm as well. So companies are seeing that it's not necessarily in their best interest anymore to continue on this path. So hopefully that'll be a growing trend. We'll see.
And I was just gonna say, for all of those Amazon shoppers out there, you can actually go into your Amazon account and you can actually choose what you would like your packages to be received in. So there is actually a least package, least amount of packaging option. So I did that. I don't buy from Amazon. My husband's like crazy Amazon buyer. And so you can go into your profile and actually choose what type of packaging that you would like them to send something in. And if you get it, if you get it from you know, a specific store through Amazon, it doesn't necessarily always come that way, but if it's something that comes directly from the Amazon warehouse, I know, you know, now I got my stuff, instead of the package and the styrofoam, it won't be moved, it's now, you know, it's not like a pressed paper that is form fitted to keep my, you know, to keep his stuff stationary, not mine. Keep his stuff stationary. So that's something that you can do, as an option as well for online buyers.
Thank you so much. The next question is, what is the first step for me to help start sustainability efforts in my downtown office? So I think we can also add, in addition to a downtown office, maybe many people I think want to know how to start sustainability efforts in their community. I don't know if that can be like combined, but if possible, that would be awesome.
Oh, okay. So I think, so the first thing I would recommend doing is, you know, try to buy like 100% post-consumer anything that you can, right? Because we talked a lot about, you know, this stuff works if there's a market for it. So 100% post-consumer paper. Look at the things that you're purchasing and see if there's a post-consumer content, because the more that we can create markets for recycled goods to be used multiple times, it will be helpful. It'll get more of this stuff in the marketplace. So I would say you could do that. Like, there's 100% post-consumer paper available. Look at buying dishes for your office use instead of using paper cups, paper plates, paper napkins, anything like that. You know, look at the chemicals that you're using in your office space. Look at your, you know, sustainability actually has a lot to do with the electric use that they're using. Get an energy audit. A lot of energy companies actually offer free energy audits. You know, carpool with your folks if you're going to a meeting or, you know, something like that. And, you know, encourage folks to bring their own stuff. I mean, I have my own water bottle here. I have my own set of silverware that's in my bag, which is what that is. You know, so there are some easy fixes. I just recently started taking my own to-go containers, although what I'm finding is like people are like, oh, you have containers?
Yeah.
Can I use your containers?
And I appreciate it.
So, you know, things like that, you know, try to go without a straw. It took me 3 months to get it down, but I got it down, you know. So, that's where I would start.
So what I would add, I mean, the question is how to begin a program in your office or community that was extended. You know, it's really important that people understand what's going on. So if it's an office, have a lunch and learn. Bring somebody in like one of us. Talk about, I'm sure that would be welcome. Talk about the plastic. Talk about what you can do on a community-wide basis. Go to your city hall. Make sure that they're providing everything possible for that community with regard to recycling, rain barrels, rain gardens, all of that. So it's really, or going door to door, what I do, I'm on the solid waste committee as well. There's cards when I'm going door to door canvassing. I always bring a solid waste card with me that lists what can be recycled and what cannot be recycled. So it's being active and getting out there to get information out. It's a form of activism, and you can do it all kinds of ways.
Well, my answer would really be to focus on the waste stream itself. And in an office building, I would say reach out to your hauler, whoever is currently removing your trash. Reach out to them and ask if they could come in and do a waste study, if they can give an audit to you. They would, you know, I've given many of these, tour the facility, tour the office, find out what exactly is being thrown away, where it's being originated at within the company, and then talk about ways in which you can either recycle it or reduce it. So again, if you're an office building, how can we recycle the materials that are coming in? And a great option would be the reusable dishes. I did actually help a company do away with styrofoam cups in their cafeteria because they implemented, you know, if you brought your own cup, you got like a quarter off your coffee. So everyone started they're bringing their own cup. But you can look at your stream of what you have and then really try to find out what can you pull out from going to the landfill. It's called diversion. We can all sustain some level of it. We can all improve it, whether we skip the straw or if we recycle the paper. But really start with your waste hauler. Reach out and find out what they have. The same thing in your community. Reach out to your service department and find out what there is offered, whether you have a curbside program or maybe you have a recycling bin somewhere in your neighborhood that you can take material to.
So I have one last thing to add to that. Cuyahoga Recycles has a business recycling specialist who will walk into your office and audit your business and tell you what you can do differently. So to enhance everything that these fine ladies just said, we can help solve your problems. So check us out, CuyahogaRecycles.org. Doreen Schreiber is her name. She does a fantastic job. She is a one-woman show, so you got to get on her schedule. But she will help your office, your business, your place of work figure out exactly what you need to do to add some sustainability, some recycling, some waste reduction to your workplace.
Thank you so much. Very helpful. Now, Sandy, you had a resource, consumer advocacy resource. It's saferchemicalshealthyfamilies.org. Is that related to this discussion?
It is, and well, people were asking what they could do, how they could have an impact, and they coordinate multiple consumer campaigns. I, in my professional career, was involved with the chemicals industry, and the American Chemistry Council even jumped into response based on the consumer advocacy campaigns that this organization had started. They leverage and work with the major retailers, so the top retailers in the country. This advocacy, consumers were starting to say, okay, what's in the stuff that we're buying? Because you retailers are the pathways for this stuff to come into my life, my home, and my biology. And so they have, again, multiple campaigns, but this is a really great way and an empowerment to you as a consumer, how you can step up and really have express your voice in this matter.
Could you repeat the name of the organization?
It's saferchemicalshealthyfamilies.org. And they, again, they have.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is it,
Did
can
I
you all
get-
hear? Sandy, saferchemicalshealthyfamilies.org. Thank you so much.
Right.
Okay, so this next question, I'm just combining all of these questions, so just follow along with me, okay? Is there a way to safely dispose of single-use plastics? What happens to all the plastic bags that are turned into collection bins at grocery store chains? Are they recycled, and into what? Will there ever be plastic bags that are biodegradable? Why can't plastics be made biodegradable? What happens to plastics that are recycled? Is it cost effective? What can be done by large corporations to curb use of plastics? Can anyone comment on the process to take single-use plastic bags and return them to diesel fuel? Did you get all that? So, Cristie got it.
I think so.
Use the mic so everybody can hear you.
So I think the main focus there is single-use plastics. So the best thing to do is not use them. I mean, that is your best choice. That's the number one choice, is to not accept something that you're only going to use once. That's the best answer I can give for that. I'm going to try to go through all the rest of them. So in regards to the plastic bags that are dropped off at the retail stores, yes, they are collected by companies, manufacturers that process them into new products like plastic lumber. So locally there's a company in the Akron area, I believe they're still in the Akron area, called Trex, T-R-E-X. They make plastic lumber products, including picnic tables and benches and chairs. So the bags and some other plastics they mix into it, and again, I'm not going to speak to what their formula is, but they do make those bags into new products. They do not become new bags, they become something else. That's an important distinction here too. So when you have a plastic water bottle, it doesn't become a plastic water bottle again. It's going to become some other plastic item. It's not going to be turned into a new plastic bottle. For biodegradable bags, there are bags made of paper, which of course are recyclable and compostable. Okay, so you can use a paper bag that would break down. The plastic bags, there are bags made of cornstarch. So the cornstarch bags, and Sunny, I think you were nodding your head for this one too, for the biodegradable bags, so maybe you can talk about it more. Cornstarch bags can be put into a commercial composting facility and broken down with the other items that are there. I think that was at least 4 of the questions, maybe. So,
That's impressive.
So I want to say again, is to reject these items that, they're not only used once, but they're going to be around for hundreds and thousands of years. It's not okay to use something for 12 minutes and then know it's going to be around for that long. Even if they're recyclable, they have to be clean, they have to get to the place, and it's only 1% to 2% of people who actually recycle or attempt to do so with a bag. It's under the radar, people aren't doing it, so, people just do not recycle. It's a minority group that will take their bags physically to a grocery store where it will end up, fortunately, someplace other than a landfill or the water and eventually the ocean. So I think that's what I want to say. Biodegradable bags, yeah, they're great if their conditions are right for that bag to actually biodegrade. It has to be out with sun, it has to be under the right conditions, but when you put even a biodegradable bag in a landfill or the water or the ocean, it's still going to be there for hundreds of years. They just recently found one in the depths of, I forgot where.
Mariana Trench.
Thank you. That supposedly was biodegradable, by the way. And we just have to change how we live. It's not all these, fancy ways to try to circumvent the reality that we need to change our behavior. And what is wrong with using reusable bags?
I wrote one of them that I managed to write down. It's about large corporations and plastics reduction. I'm not sure if this person is talking about, I'll try to answer it anyway. So I happened to just the last couple of days have spent time with other organizations who are working on marine debris issues in the Great Lakes region. And one of the gentlemen that attended, the focus of his organization is actually working with industry to identify ways that they can streamline the things they're making, use better materials, use less materials, that kind of thing. I do feel like, that makes sense to bring industry together. Obviously, they have to be a part of the solution, because they are part of the problem as well. So his thought process was creating or moving towards a circular economy so that everything that's being produced ultimately cycles back around and there's zero waste. I know that is a lofty goal, of course, but I think it's worth working in that direction. So inviting companies to the table to be part of that kind of discussion, that's something that his organization is seeking to do throughout the Great Lakes region. So certainly, helping to get those companies there, encouraging, businesses that to be a part of such discussions would be a great first step.
Thank you. And I think, this next question, how can we get support?
What about the diesel fuel question?
Oh,
That was the
diesel.
one I did not write down.
Oh, okay, the diesel fuel question. So I am going to punt on this question, but I am gonna tell you to punt towards a specific person on this question. So, go to Buckeye Environmental Network .org. I think it's anyway, Buckeye Environmental Network, there is a woman who has been working with toxics there for 25 years, who I asked the same question to her like 5 years ago. And she can explain to you why it doesn't work. I can't. But she can. So if you email her, if you go to Buckeye Environmental Network and email them, you can get an answer to that question.
.org?
Yes, .org.
Hey, thank you. And I think we captured pretty much all the other questions. Thank you so much. And I think this question has pretty much been addressed. How can we get support from retailers to reduce plastic use? Is there anything further we can say about that one, or did we, I think we kind of touched on that one. Okay. And now this, I'm going to try to make sure I get this, capture this. Why can Toledo, for instance, continue to recycle? It says number 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7 plastics, and Cuyahoga County accepts jugs and bottles with a neck.
I can answer that.
Okay. Great.
So we have seen a transition in the plastics recycled. We used to use the plastic numbers 1 through 7, and in the last few years we have gone to plastic bottles and jugs. The Recycle Partnership did come up a number of years ago and did interview all of the large haulers that had a material recovery facility, and did talk about what do you want in the program and what do you not want in the program. The big thing for us especially is guaranteeing that if we say we're going to recycle it, we are going to recycle it. And we're just a processor. We're not a manufacturer, we're not the end user, we're not the consumer. We're trying to remedy a problem. We understand that this material should not be in the landfill. We do own landfills, and we do understand that there's a life expectancy on those, and the more material that we can take out of the landfill and reuse again, the better. So we have to guarantee if we say we're going to recycle it, that we're going to recycle it. And we have pressure from our end purchasers of the material that they only want materials that are bottles and jugs. The materials are different. They are molded, they do melt at a different temperature than say a clamshell does. So for the end user, they really have the demand of stating, we want plastic bottles and jugs. Those are the highly sought after plastics, and that we can confirm and guarantee that they are being recycled. We are very transparent as a company, and it's a really difficult topic to address. We understand everybody would like to be as green as possible, but we have to be committed to our word, and if we say we're going to recycle it, we need to ensure that we are doing that, and our method of doing that is to stick with plastic 1s and 2s, which are the bottles and the jugs, because we know that there's a market for that material.
Thank you so much. The next question is, how should we be regulating the new plastics industry in Ohio?
That would be you. Well, so that's kind of a complicated question because there are so many different types of facilities that are coming in. So I can tell you that like the underground storage permit that they gave to the Mountaineer storage facility, that is the first time Ohio EPA has ever done anything like that before.
Okay.
As far as the ethane cracker plant, they get a Clean Water Act permit, discharge permit, they get an air permit, and they get a construction permit, and that's it. That's what they get. And that's what all of these same fracked gas facilities that have been in Ohio for a long period of time have been getting. Oh, thank you, you're so sweet. And I shrinked you. No. So that's it. That's the only regulation they have. And I can tell you that there is no interest to regulate them beyond that. We have the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act that's being rolled back right now at the national level. But you know, it's not a coincidence that this petrochemical hub is being built at the same time that they're trying to prevent municipalities from, you know, controlling what they do with their own waste stream. And this is, you know, like Sarah was saying, this is just a tip of the iceberg. They also have an freedom of speech bill. They have an anti-protest bill, and they talk about the ethane cracker on the floor of House Bill 242, where they're, you know, when they're trying to prevent local communities from, you know, dealing with the plastic waste problem, and they talk about the ethane cracker during, you know, the legislative conversation on Senate Bill 33, which is the anti-protest bill. I mean, they are doing this for a reason, and the last thing that they're interested in is regulating the plastic industry. I mean, Jobs Ohio just gave the single largest grant it has ever given for $30 million to entice this plastic ethane cracker to come to Ohio. Your tax money.
So we're courting this.
You got it. We've been. So I could come up with a whole list of stuff on ways that we should regulate this place out of business. But it's not going to happen. Not with the current legislation. Not with the current administration in the state of Ohio, and not with the current administration in the state of this country. So it's people power. And I also have this, I just want to put in a plug for this, real quick. So if you want to help oppose House Bill 242, the bill that preempts local government's ability to control the waste streams, plastics, you can take out your phone right now, and you can text the word Protect OH, one word, Protect OH. And the number that you're going to text those words to is 69866. And I have a little piece of paper up here that also has, you know, some Twitter and Facebook phone numbers and stuff on it, if you'd like to come up and get one, and try to help us stop this bill from being passed. But you can text Protect OH to 69866, sign our petition, and it'll go to your senator.
What is the timeline on that bill?
That's a great question. So the bill has had a committee hearing in the House. It passed through the committee 8-6. And just for the record, if you live in Rocky River or Weston to Westlake, you live in the district of Representative Greenspan, who is on that committee and who voted to move the bill on. So he especially needs to hear from you, because this bill is next going to the House floor, where it will be voted on by all House members. So he needs to know that he made a mistake. And he can right that mistake by opposing the bill when it comes to the House floor. So currently the state legislature's on recess. They'll come back maybe like mid-September. Well, they might come back to do other things, but to address all business, they'll be back probably more like mid-September.
September 18th.
Yep. So yeah, we have time to mount opposition to the bill and make sure that our decision makers are hearing from us. So appreciate your help in that.
What's that guy's name?
Greenspan, who used to be a county council rep and understood at the time about, you know, local control and charter autonomy, and now at the state, we no longer, you know, it's a different perspective. But it's first on their agenda when they come back from recess in the House. This is going to be their top priority, is to pass this in the House, and then it goes over to the Senate, which is going to resume probably in October. So please contact your representatives and put the pressure on there, because this is something that is irreversible. Once instead of investing in clean energy and solar and everything we're trying to do up here in Cuyahoga County, it's just the opposite. And one thing, if I can talk about local control, if I could, add it to the list. So we have an opioid lawsuit at the county, and we're joined with other counties, and we actually are close to reaching a settlement, and the state, just Yost today, is trying to stop us from having local control over our lawsuit and try to prevent counties from actually having the autonomy to sue and recoup damages for those things that we've had to pay out in our community, which has devastated Cuyahoga County, our foster care system. But that's a different topic, but it's along the line of just the sweeping preemption activity that's taken over our state.
You know what? You must be reading this card. I don't know. Who wrote this question? The question was Sarah mentioned, for Sunny. Sarah mentioned that preemption is unconstitutional. Is the county prepared to bring suit against the state to assert its home rule rights?
I am a lawyer, and I am anticipating that will be happening, and we're gonna team up with other organizations throughout the state to fight this preemption, including, I think, Ohio Municipal League and other organizations that understand why autonomy of a community is so important. And this stems back to fracking. When local communities try to zone and control the fracking in their communities, Highland Heights, for example, the state came in and just wiped that ability away so they could just frack and destroy, in my opinion, our land and water for a profit.
Thank you so much, Sam. This is for anyone. Are there any initiatives to provide financial support to tech startups focused on using recycled materials to manufacture new goods?
Does anyone know?
No one? Okay. You gotta Google that one.
Business school, ask a business school.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Given how new the science is on the health effects on plastics, can you inform us on what is known?
Is that endocrine disruptors?
Yeah, it's not new.
It's not new.
Yeah, the science is not new on plastics. Actually, so I stopped using plastics when my son was small because of the research that was coming out of Europe at the time. And it's not just, it's not just the oh gosh, they talked about what's the kind of plastic? BPA. It's not just BPA. It's so much more ubiquitous than that. So they use plasticizers. They use toxic components when it goes from the pellet into an actual product, right? They use other types of compounds in that process that can be toxic. And everybody used to tell me, well, I hate drinking out of a plastic cup because I'm like, I can taste the plastic, and they're like, you're nuts. Guess what? No, it wasn't. Yeah, it's not new science. It's actually been coming out of Europe for almost 30 years. I think what some of that early research in the United States, most of it was done with, like fish populations, and it was done, in obviously in mice. But the research has been around for a while. I think that you can look largely to, the oil and gas industry, the petrochemical industry for suppressing that, type of research, suppressing that, probably at the national level, and their lobby, right? And then you also look at a lot of our large research institutions. So I'm a graduate from Ohio State University. I have a degree in natural resources and policy, and I can tell you that the Ohio State University just got an organic garden that the students have been asking for years. They just got one 5 years ago. And think about how long we've known about organics. So a lot of the research that happens at these big institutions are funded by big oil and gas and big chemical companies, right? And so, it's this research has been going on for a while. And I think that we know the endocrine disruption, we know about, they found, plastic, they found plastic components in umbilical cord, blood. I mean, it passes through the brain, blood, the brain blood barrier. It passes through you know, the umbilical cord, it is in all of our bodies, right now. It's in all of our bodies. They found it in Antarctica from being vaporized in the air. They found it in snow in Antarctica. It's made from, you know, it's made from oil and gas or fracked gas. And the last thing you would want to do would be drink oil or inhale fracked gas. It's just, you know, it's just, at the base level, it stops human development from progressing the way it's supposed to. And it's most impactful on young kids and sensitive populations. You know, babies, infants, pregnant mothers, and sensitive populations, so people that have chronic illnesses and are elderly.
What I found is that the Progressive Bag Alliance has been one of the lobbyists to stop our legislation. They're part of ALEC, but it's a similar, I've talked about this before, to the tobacco industry's own scientific group that, you know, is able to basically just deceive the public, using pseudoscience to say that secondhand smoke and tobacco is not harmful to human health. Now we've got the Progressive Bag Alliance that has its own pseudoscience, counteracting and trying to get that message out there to the population that plastic is not harmful, but everything we know otherwise by real science, it is.
Thank you. Sarah Mathews, there's a question here. What are some of the end products of your recycled materials?
Some of the end products, cardboard can be turned back into more cardboard, aluminum cans into aluminum cans. Glass can be turned into a fiberglass. Plastics can be turned into other plastic items like your indoor-outdoor carpet type of item. But we try to keep our items as close to home as possible. Paper obviously gets turned into other paper products, but those would be the big ones, I'd say.
Thank you. I know we've got just like 4 more minutes, so we've got like 100 more questions. So we'll try to get a few more in very quickly. And I think the one, how can businesses encourage employees to recycle? I think we kind of touched on that. But Sonny, why did you choose a plastic bag ban as opposed to a fee?
I actually chose a fee initially. That was the first iteration of the legislation in 2017, was to impose a 10-cent fee on plastic and paper at point of sale, because that's the most, what I've studied and read, it is hugely effective, because we know paper is also a problem with regard to the production, the use of natural resources, diversion of all of our resources for a product that's shipped and used, and it can be recycled. But my colleagues were persuaded in part by the progressive bag industry that heavily lobbied our council to tell them that this fee was hurting poor people, and poor people cannot use reusable bags. So I did not have the support on the fee. That's why I shifted over to a ban on plastic, which I was able to garner the support, and certainly we're going to do everything we can, including this ban, even though in my opinion is not the gold standard, but it's certainly a start and will have an impact.
Thank you. Businesses like Home Depot light bulbs and Best Buy batteries, electronic equipment, are they still accepting these recyclables? Are there other companies doing this?
Yes, so Home Depot, Lowe's accept CFL bulbs for recycling. They also have rechargeable battery drop-offs. There are no single-use battery drop-offs that I am aware of, only for rechargeable batteries. So your single-use alkaline batteries would just be placed in the regular trash once you use them up. For electronics, you can take those to Best Buy. Best Buy has a great list on their website. It's bestbuy.com/recycling. They list every single thing that they will take in their vestibule drop-off area. Staples also accepts all computer and office equipment for recycling if you're looking to get rid of those sorts of things.
Great. Can we please thank this amazing Thank you so much. Thank each and every one of you.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing, amazing.
may I ask you whether they have cards
Yes.
with
You may ask
name and
that.
phone name and phone numbers?
And cards, and then we had a few other questions here. I'm sorry we could not get to them, but just thank you all so much for your, for your participation this evening. And we've got to do a special thanks to Heather and Michael for putting on this outstanding. And we are at 8:29. Oh, yes.
Could I just make a general announcement, a plug